So everyone, any doubts in this flow? Whatever the first flow. Suppose if invoke list, where it will go, right? Any doubts in this? See, if you want to understand this completely, okay. So if I say localhost 8080/student tab student list, you got this one, right? How you got this form? Which URL I type? This URL, right? So this URL I type, right? So when I type this URL, where it goes? It goes to this URL, this pattern. This is your base URL. You can put like /student/list. Okay, it will go to this. It will go to this, right? It will go to this. And then so this URL pattern will match with this. So now this will call the student service, which is get student. So go to your service class. Get students, right? Now, so where this will go now? It will call the DAO class. So DAO get students. So it will call your DAO get students, right? Right. Now what this will do? This will execute the query. It will execute the query and then get the result. You will get an array list of result. So that will return back, right? So this result is returned back here. Now this result is returned back here. Now you'll have the list of students, right? It is querying from student. Whatever the students are there, which database it is connecting to? My database. Go to your database. Student MVC app. Right? Then I'll say use, I'll say show tables. Then here I'll say select star from student, right? What is the query it is giving? Student order by last name. Order by last name. unknown column. I think it's last underscore name. In SQL, in Java, it is last name. In column names, it is last name. This column name is mapped to this property, right? This is what we call HQL. This I told you, right? HQL internal gets converted to SQL. This is mapped to your table and this is mapped to your column name in the table, right? So if you see order by last name, you got this, right? In the same order, you can see in the screen also. See, first Ramesh Babu. Okay, Ramesh Babu. Next, Pradeep Babu. Pradeep Babu. John David. John David. Next, Vamsi Krishna. Vamsi Krishna. So in the whatever in the DB order, we are getting in the same order. Right. So whatever this list is there, right? This list is where we are adding that this list object as a key. And now we are returning this list student. Now there will be a JSP with this name. Now go to your JSP now. Okay, this is your JSP. Okay, this is your JSP, right? This is all your HTML tags, right? And you know, these are your style sheets. If you don't have the style sheets, you will not get this proper alignments, proper look and feels like that. Okay, this is your style sheets. And here the student data application form. Okay, this is built-in headline with proper color, right? With proper color, you have this. And these are your div tags. Now, if you see here, input type equal to button, add student. Yeah, this is your button, right? You see, add student button. This is your button. Now on click, when you click on this, if you click on this, so it will be redirected into a form. That's what. On click, it will go to href equal to show form for add. Now that means this is also one URL. So this URL should match in the controller class this pattern. See, show form for add means this URL. This URL. That means when you click this button, add student, it will go to this URL. That means it will match with this URL. And this is my URL. What we are doing, we are creating a student object. We are adding that student object and returning a student form. This we have seen in the form submission. Remember? So this is going to a form submission. That means student form.jsp. That means go to your student form.jsp. So this is your student form.jsp, which is your student data application form. Right? So these are your style sheets. Next here, if you see, here I'm giving a save student. Next form action equal to save student, model attribute. I told you this, right? Form action. We are using Spring Form tags. Now first name, input path equal to first name. Next, last name, input path equal to last name. Next, email. Okay, this one, input path equal to email, right? Now, whatever the values that will be entering here will be bind to the student object automatically. All the values will be bind to the student object properties. That means this property values. Your first name, last name, email, all. We have seen in the form submission already. Now on click on save, where it has to go? It has to go to this action method. Where is your action? Save student. That means save student also should be part of your controller class. That means this URL. Save student. Right? So basically not save student, okay? In method name, save student. Now this is calling your, this is what it is calling. It is calling the student service.save student and it is redirecting to student list. Okay. Okay. See, post mapping, get mapping, right? For example, see, when you are doing form submission, when you are doing a form submission, that means you are, say, you are doing a form submission. That means you are sending a post request. HTTP post. HTTP post request. Right. So whenever this HTTP post request, and you are giving some URL // save student. Now in your controller class, you should have post mapping. Ideally, you should have a request mapping. Okay. Value equal to save student. This is what we give. Student. Method is equal to post. We give like this. HTTP method dot post. Right? We give like this. Suppose if I give a get request. See, post means you are sending some data. You are sending some data. So generally use this in the form submissions. If you see in form submission, if you go, here you're giving method equal to post. And you're sending some data. Okay. The shortcut for this, instead of writing this longer method, I can write simply, the shortcut is @post mapping. Post mapping of, just I'll give this URL. Right? So instead of giving this longer way, now that means this URL pattern will match with this, with a post request. So in your form submission, this is your form. Your form is sending your HTTP post request like this. Okay, similarly, if I want to read some data, I'll give a get request, right? HTTP get request. And here I'll say list students. Right? Now this is my client. Now here I say @request mapping. So value equal to list students. Method equal to HTTP method dot get. Right? So instead of writing this longer thing, the shortcut for this is, @get mapping. So what is your HTTP post? When you are sending some data from your client to this, from a form or from your browser, you are sending some data to the server, you call it post request. When you are reading some data, when you are reading from data from your server, you'll use get request. See, for example, if you see here, you are reading some data, you are reading some list of students. Okay, you're getting some students. So you'll use a get mapping. Right. So instead of this complete value, I say get map. Okay. Similarly, you are sending some data. So which is through form submission. So here you'll use post mapping. That means you are creating you're saving some data into your server. So whenever you're sending data from your browser to the server, you'll use post. Whenever you're reading the data from your server to client or browser, you'll use get. Everyone understood this? So HTTP post will be used when browser sends data to server to save or update data in database. Right? Example, form submission. Right? You are entering some data in form and that is getting saved. Next, HTTP GET means, so HTTP GET will be used to read data from server to browser. So example, get a list of students, okay, etc. Right? Everyone understood? What is this? So I'll share you this project. Understood the flow, right? You understood the flow, right? From where the URL comes, where you'll be matching. Any doubts here? Any questions? Any questions? Any doubts? Any doubts or any questions? I'm waiting for your responses in this project. What about others? Only one or two hardly replying. I'm not getting reply from others. Yeah, I'll upload in Google Classroom. But only thing I wanted to know, everyone understood or not? Only two people are. Okay. All right. So what is our next one? Next we'll do. So I'll upload this project in this. So what is our next? What is our next one? Anyone have any idea what is our next topic that we are going to do? Spring Boot, Spring REST. Mm-hmm. Right. Spring REST. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So what I'll do is after completing Spring REST and I'll cover all the topics till Spring Boot. After completing all this, then I will walk you through the interview questions from each topic. Okay, like Spring MVC, Spring REST, okay, Spring Boot. So all that I'll be covering the interview topics. Okay, right then. So what is actually Spring REST? Anyone is having any idea? Spring REST. So basically, REST means RESTful Web Services. What is web service? A web service is, we can think like a program that is accessible from the web. Instead of program is a Lerman term, we call it as, instead of program, we call a service. A service that is accessible from web. What is a service? A service is a unit of task. Or we can say, a service is, we can say, a program that performs certain, but that forms a functionality. See, for example, I'll tell you one scenario. Say, you developed a program, right? You developed a program, okay, to generate map locations or map routes. You have written a program to generate map routes from source to destination, right? So, for example, I give source as Hyderabad, okay, and destination as some Bangalore. So you generated you've written a program to generate map routes, shortest map routes, shortest map routes. From the shortest paths from source to destination, you have written a program. Now, how many people will need this kind of program? Definitely, so many people will be needing, right? For example, an application like Zomato needs this. I'm just giving an example. An application like Vola needs this. Vola Cabs. Okay, Uber Cabs. Okay, they need this kind of program because they wanted to know the shortest route from one place to another place. So that is the reason Zomato is like a food delivery system. Vola Cabs and Uber Cabs are your taxi traveling systems or cab traveling systems. They should know. Okay. Now, how they access this? So do these teams again need to write the program, whatever you have written? I think it will take some time for them to write. Instead of that, already you have written this program. So why can't you make this as a web service? Okay, why can't you make this as a web service so that these teams, whoever needs, they can access your web service, call the web service and get the response. So that is what a web service. A service that is accessible from the web. So a service means a program that performs a functionality. Now what this does some functionality. What is the functionality of this web service? It generates some map routes. Okay. But now you don't have this chance. Already this program is written by Google Maps. So Google Maps are already written that, and they exposed web service. Right. Now these people are calling these apps are calling this web service to get the particular location. So like I'm just giving an example like that. It can be anything. Like for example, okay. So you already this was written by Google Maps. You can think about different idea. Okay. So I'm also telling you one more thing. Like suppose you can write a web service. Okay. That can generate stock price in the stock price for the given company's list, right? Of course, this web service also is available. Okay, nowadays so many web services are there. Okay, that's why so many apps are getting built up. Okay, so now your app like Zerodha or some other stock price calculators, what they do, they use this web service. Okay, get the stock prices and they do some calculations. So the advantage of this is these apps need not write the logic again. They can use this web service. They can call. Already Google Map has developed this kind of program which generates the shortest map. They spent a lot of effort on this. Why again Ola Cabs or Uber Cabs apps, they need to write the program. They can call this web service and get the result, right? So they can focus on some other things, their own business logics. Zomato, their own logic like food delivering system. Okay, how the the other functionalities like order management. Okay, next notifying the restaurant people. Those are the different functionalities Zomato. Map location and all that, they can use this from Google Maps and get the things. And how Google Maps has provided a web service. And they can use that. Okay, similarly, your stock exchange apps like Zerodha, they can call this web service that generates stock prices and they can use that for calculations and all that. So like that, you can think like, finally, what you can do is you can think like a web service. Okay. A web service is like a program, okay, that is exposed so that any consumer can connect to that web service and get the required result. Okay, it is a program or a service running so that any consumer, what are consumers? For example, the consumers of this Google Map, your Google Map is one web service. The consumers of this web service are your Zomato, Ola Cabs, Uber Cabs, these one. Okay, so the consumers can connect to that web service and get the required data. So in that way, these consumers no need to implement whatever the logic this has been built, just they call that service, that's all. See, it is as if simple one thing. If you go to your normal standalone Java program, what you do, say for example, you write one class, some utility class. Okay. Okay. Which has some utility functions, like for example, let us take some generate shortest paths, something like this. Right? like this. Now, the other classes in your project, class A, can call, okay, utility.generate shortest paths. Right? Right? So that will call this, so that logic gets executed. Now, this is your local call. Okay. Now you don't need to write whatever the logic that is present here. You don't need to repeat. You just call this. That's all. You just call this method present in this class. It will execute that logic. Now the same thing. Now what happens if this class is moved to a web service? Is moved to a web service, and so that not only this class, so many components can, so many clients can call this website, because this is now exposed over an internet. This is exposed over an internet. Now, so many clients can access this website. Okay. So many clients can access this website. Now, how do we, what are the different ways to write web service? So basically, there are different ways. So the most popular, there are two types of web services. One is SOAP-based web services. And another one is RESTful web services. SOAP-based web services is a older term. Almost this has been developed almost 20 years back. 20 years back, this web service has come into the picture. And this uses SOAP protocol. SOAP protocol. Okay. So basically, suppose I develop a SOAP-based web service. I develop a SOAP-based web service. Now the client or the consumer. The client or the consumer. The client or consumer will connect to the SOAP-based web service. Okay, by sending a SOAP request. Right? And the SOAP-based web service will get a SOAP response. And what is a SOAP? SOAP means SOAP is actually built on, this SOAP is a protocol. This is a protocol. So where it is built on HTTP. Your SOAP is built on HTTP. SOAP protocol is built on HTTP. So basically what this SOAP protocol will do is, this uses HTTP plus the XML data. That means the request and response will be in the XML format. XML request and XML response. Okay. So basically, this is actually SOAP is very difficult. I mean, the learning curve. If you want to learn SOAP, it will take some time. It is a very complex structure. Okay. And the developers actually, especially from the technical team, they used to find difficulty in implementing SOAP-based projects, SOAP-based web services projects. So later came actually, why can't we simplify this instead of having these complex scenarios? Okay, because SOAP is not straightforward, not directly sending here, not internally. Your client, your SOAP will actually have a mechanism called WSDL file. I'm not going to explain all this to you. WSDL file, which is called web service definition language. Now this WSDL file will be given to the client or consumer. Client will generate some stubs. So first step, server will give WSDL file, which is called web service definition language. So what this contains is to client or consumer. So what this file will contain is, what are the, see this, ultimately what is this web service? This is a method, okay? This is a method just like this. See, you have a class, you have a method. This method will be just now copied to the web service. So instead of single class calling this method, now multiple classes which are connected through internet, they can call this. So it is just a method. So this now WSDL file will contain what are the inputs to be passed to the method. I mean the method signature. What are the data types of that method signature? Okay, that method can have multiple input arguments. That method will return an out. So whether it takes the first argument is a string argument, the second argument is a integer argument, because a method can take multiple parameters, right? All that it will define. We call this as a contract. It will define the contract of that web service. Now, what client or consumer will do? Client or consumer will generate stubs from WSDL. So client or consumer will generate stubs from WSDL. Okay. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Okay, sorry, I got one call. So client or consumer will generate stubs from WSDL, okay? And then client will send request. To server through stubs. Okay. So we'll send SOAP request, we can say. SOAP request. SOAP is nothing but XML request. SOAP request to server through stubs. What is stub means? Stub is nothing but proxy classes. Okay. They are also Java classes, but I mean, they're proxy classes to your original web service. But you know, this used to be very complex actually, especially for the developers to develop this kind of SOAP-based web services. So next came very simplified way of doing, which is called RESTful web services. And this has become very popular. Because of easy in development, easy features in development. Okay, it has, okay, so that's why most of the projects are using this RESTful web services. It is not like that SOAP web services are completely vanished or completely removed. It is not like that, but still But actually, one main advantage of SOAP than REST is SOAP is highly secure. Okay, SOAP is highly secure than REST. Secure than REST. So that's why SOAP is mostly preferred in banking projects. Even now also, even today also. Okay, some of the banking projects are using SOAP-based web services. Okay, but so most of the, say for example, if you take microservices architecture or anything, so most of the things are using RESTful web services because of its easy in development. The learning curve is also very easy. What is REST then? What is REST? See, REST actually, if you see SOAP is a separate protocol. It is a separate protocol which is built on HTTP. For RESTful web services, there is no protocol at all. See, protocol means like kind of how the request has to be put, how the response has to be put, what are the various headers, what are the security headers, and all that it doesn't adhere. So RESTful web services are very easy to develop. See, RESTful web services are just nothing but they follow the style. They follow the style of HTTP. That's all. So whatever the HTTP follows, HTTP is the basic protocol for everything. What is HTTP? It is an internet protocol between client and server that can transfer HTTP request, your hypertext language or HTTP request. So you know about HTTP, right? I don't need to tell about HTTP, that which comes in your computer networking. Okay, HTTP means it is a standard protocol between client and server that transfers HTML or hypertext data. Hypertext data. What is hypertext data? The data that is rendered from your web. For example, your web pages. Your web pages are your hypertext data, right? Suppose I'll just tell you one example. See, I'm just taking this example. Your Wikipedia contains Narendra Modi. Okay, this Narendra Modi. Okay, this is a web page. How I'm doing? I'm just typing this URL. I'm typing this URL, right? And it is using HTTP. Right? I'm using this URL. This is your browser. In browser, you type this. Now this goes to your Wikipedia server. Your Wikipedia server. Okay. So this gives the response back. It gives this web page. So, this is following a HTTP protocol. It is sending HTTP request. And it is sending a HTTP response back. HTTP response, which is your web page. So for example, if you see here, this is returning a web page. And what is HTTP? HTTP means hypertext transfer protocol. What do you mean by hypertext? If you see, this is your text. In this text, there are a lot of hypertext. Where see, for example, if you see, these blue colors. These are your hypertext. That means when you click on this hypertext, it will redirect to other website, other page. That means hypertext means, so it will have the links to other pages, to other content or websites, web pages, or anything. That is what we call hypertext. Okay, your hypertext. See, for example, if you see here, if I click on this, it will go to the other link. If I click on this, it will go to the other link. So that's why, see, so the advantage of this is, so if I click on this, you will see another site like this, right? Now again, this will contain again another link. If you click on this, it will again contain. Like that, you can easily navigate from one page to other page by seeing that, by clicking on that links. So that means the advantage of this is you can transfer lot of content through these links. That is advantage. You can transfer. Now you see, in the single request only, now I got this much information. Now if I click on this link, I'll get different informations also. Right? So that is what this hypertext thing. Okay. So that is why this HTTP protocol has become very popular in your internet, in your client server programming, in your internet programming. Now your RESTful web service, your SOAP also works on HTTP only. But only thing is it has built its own protocol for security and all that. So that's why it has become very complex. But REST doesn't have any protocol. It just uses HTTP protocol only. And whatever HTTP protocol uses, REST is also designed in that way. So that is why it is very easy to develop. Very simple, I'll tell you. See, for example, now, what is a web service? A web service is a program. A web service is a program running in the server, right? Which is exposed over web. So program running in the server. So that is exposed to web. Right? Now any client can access it. Fine. Now, this program can take data, right? This program, what it can do, it can create data. Okay. Okay. Let us think like, okay, first I'll say create data, read data, update data, right? Delete data, all that. Right? So program running in the server that is exposed to web. Program can create data, read data, update data, delete data, right? Now, what is this data? So this data is called resource. Okay, when you consider in the RESTful web services, we call this as a resource. Resource or entity. Now let us think like this. Now I have written a web service. Okay. Web service. Okay. To create a centralized student database. You know, different colleges or different training centers, they can actually use this web service. So different colleges, okay, college 1, college 2, college 3. Okay, they can use this and they can actually add their student, whoever is studying in this college, they can use a post request, a HTTP post request. A HTTP post request, okay, to send or to create student. Okay. Okay, so I can write one web service. Right? Now this web service has different methods. So I can write one web service, one endpoint. This is a web service, which is your student thing. So in that, I'll write one web service. This is we call it as one endpoint. One endpoint. Okay. Now in the same, okay. Now I can write another endpoint to read to read student data from database. So now this college wants to read the data from student, data from this. It will use HTTP GET request. Okay, to read student data. Okay. Now your RESTful web services are nothing but they use. So in this RESTful web services, which is your resource? Your student. Resource or entity is called student actually. Here, resource or entity means the data. Which data it is? Student data. So we call this as resource. We call this as a resource. And what is the action? So this is doing a post action. This is doing a get action. So the action. So the action is here. This action is get action. Okay. Here the action is. Here the action is post action. Right? So your RESTful web services is built on this concept only. Your RESTful web services is built on this concept. The resource means the entity, that means the data. So here it is a student is the data here. So student entity is the one. So it's a resource and action is, so reading the data is get request, which is the action get action. Creating the data is post request, which is your post action, right? And now, what is a data exchange format between a client and server? So this is using JSON. So we can use XML or JSON. Okay, XML request or JSON request. So, but the most popular is called JSON. JSON. So RESTful web services uses. So in RESTful web services, what we'll do? Say client will send a JSON request. So client will send. So you have RESTful web services. Right? So client will send. So client will send a JSON request. Right? And server will generate a JSON response. Right? So client will send a JSON request. RESTful web service will send a JSON response back. So JSON is also like XML only, but it's in a different structure, different syntax. Okay, JSON is more easy than XML. Now, because of this, your client can be developed with your Angular application, Angular or React.js, okay, or a Python-based application. Your RESTful web service can be implemented using Java or Python, right, or .NET. So your RESTful web service now, because now any language can understand JSON. JSON and XML are universally acceptable standard formats. Now Angular can understand JSON. It can send the JSON request to this, and a RESTful web service will receive this JSON request. Okay, and again process it, sends the response back. So your JSON response again will be understood by your client. So because of this, so this feature is called interoperability. This feature is called interoperability. That means any language client can interact with any language RESTful web service. Okay. So generally web service feature itself is an interoperability. Even SOAP also works in the same way. But only thing is, SOAP is very complicated. Your RESTful web service is just based on your HTTP concepts like HTTP GET, POST. If you want to send some data, you'll use HTTP POST. The data is called resource. We call it in RESTful web service. If we want to read some data, we call HTTP GET. So we use that. So client sends JSON request. So This one server will send a JSON response. I'll be giving you the overview of JSON, how JSON structure will be there. So tomorrow I'm going to tell you the JSON structure and all that. And RESTful web services, so we build using Java. We'll not use this Python or .NET. We'll not go with this. So we'll use Java, and we use Spring REST. Okay, Spring REST for developing RESTful web service, right? And so basically, what is Spring REST? Spring REST is nothing but it is built on Spring MVC only. It is built on Spring MVC. Because if you see what Spring MVC contains, your Spring MVC contains your dispatcher servlet, right? Your dispatcher servlet. Now any request that comes here, okay, suppose I give a request like /students, right? I'll say get /students. It is a get request. Now dispatcher servlet, what it will do? It will internally invoke a controller bean. It will invoke a controller bean, right? Matching with get mapping /students, right? We have seen this in our MVC also, right? Now, only difference is in MVC, what will happen is, now you can think like this is also REST. Okay, this is a RESTful web service only. This is a RESTful web service. This is a RESTful web service. Now, what will happen? Whatever this method returns a response back, so directly this is returned as a JSON response here. So directly this is sent as a JSON response. But in in normal MVC flow, see, this also it works on MVC only. But only thing is, here directly the response is returned as a JSON response in RESTful web service. But in normal Spring MVC, whatever the response that is coming, it is going to a view here. It is going to a view, which is called JSP. So JSP view. In RESTful web service, we will not have this flow. In RESTful web service, we will not have this flow. So we will not have JSP flow. In RESTful web service, we will not have the in RESTful web service, we will not have the JSP view. Directly, whatever the response that is coming from the controller bean. So in RESTful web service, in Spring REST, so the response coming from the controller bean. Controller bean is directly returned. Is directly returned to the browser or client without going to the view resolver or view. So that is the difference. So it works on Spring MVC flow only, but only thing is your Spring MVC, what are the response that is coming from your controller bean that is going to your view JSP. But in RESTful web service, so whatever the response that is coming from this controller is directly returned to the browser, not go to the view. Now, who will present this response? There will be one application like your Angular or React like this. So that will present the response. Angular or React JS application will take the JSON response and present it. Everyone clear the concept, whatever I told you? Everyone clear? So what is the difference between a Spring MVC and Spring REST? Spring REST also works on Spring MVC only, but only thing is in Spring MVC, the result from the control ribbon is going to a JSP view, but here directly the result is returned back to your browser or the client. So and there your Angular or React.js application will take that response and present it. So tomorrow we are going to see this JSON and this RESTful. See, RESTful web service already, you know the Spring MVC flow, right? Same flow, but only this I'm going to tell you about this JSON and all that. Okay, how a JSON request is sent and how that is. Okay. All right then. Any doubts? Any questions till now? All right then. And tomorrow we'll see. Right? Tomorrow you just attend without fail. Tomorrow we are going to see some important things. Okay then. Okay then.